Hello and welcome to the Marquette Food Co-op virtual cooking classroom. My name is Sarah Monti and I'm the Outreach Director here at the Co-op, and today I'm going to show you one of my favorite simple soups called Goan chickpea or chicken soup, your choice. So let's start by talking about what you'll need here. You're going to need a bigger pot and you're going to need to do what we call mise en place. You may have seen this on a previous video, but mise en place is everything in its place. While it's a French term, what we're making today is actually from India, but it's equally important. There are steps you're going to have to take quickly. When things are ready, you have to move, and so I strongly advise having everything measured out and chopped ahead of time. Let's talk about what those things are. So first of all, you'll see that I have some onion that I've chopped up. For those who haven't seen this before, I just want to briefly show you about cutting an onion. So this is an onion. I've already cut it in half. I cut off one end, made a nice flat surface, and then cut it in half, which makes it really easy to peel. This is going to come right off. When you don't cut it in half first, it's a lot more challenging. Now this is a really forgiving recipe. You can do big old chops. They don't have to be the same. You're going to cook these onions until they're nice and soft. I'm going to grab a knife here. And then what you're going to do is you can actually see lines that go across. They're very narrow on the onion. You don't have to cut with every line, but we're going to cut in the same direction as those lines. You'll also notice that I left the root end here of the onion attached. That can help you to keep the onion together. It can get a little slidey as you start cutting. So we're going to cut. And then make sure you have your fingers out of the way so you don't nick the tips of your fingers. And you can just go the opposite direction across your onion. You see, I even had a little end to hold on to because I left that. That's all I did for those onions. One option, and this is totally optional, I know that many of you watching are probably here in the UP, and you might not be used to using a lot of chili peppers in your cooking. If you love heat, please feel free to use any kind of chili pepper you can get your hands on, no matter what the recipe might say. Serranos, jalapenos, whatever's accessible and you have on hand, you can use in this recipe. It can be red, it can be green, whatever you want. Now, if you want to add a little bit of this flavor without as much of the heat, one thing you can do is take the end off, cut your pepper in half, and you can scoop out the pith and the seeds. So the pith is just that kind of lighter green, almost white fiber inside of your pepper. And the pith is actually what's quite spicy. And the seeds, since they're attached to it, also then become quite spicy. So if you like all of the heat, you can literally keep those in there and just do slices of chili pepper, and it'll be quite good. I can actually smell that this is quite a hot chili pepper. You might be able to tell that too. If you don't have that sensation, it might be a really mild pepper and you'll want to do more of it. Or if you want a little bit of the flavor but you don't want to bite into something that's too big, you can always cut this in half again and just do little tiny baby dice. Just teeny skinny strips, and that'll add a little flavor and a little heat without you actually biting into a huge chunk of pepper. Whatever you do is completely up to you. Oftentimes I will make this with only a quarter of a pepper, if that, no seeds or pith, to make sure my 10-year-old can still stand to eat it. So we'll get that out of the way. You're also going to want to either cut your chicken into bite-sized chunks ahead of time, stick it in the fridge until you're ready to use it, or open up your can of chickpeas. I love this soup because I love having a handy vegetarian recipe. Eating more vegetarian recipes can be a lot cheaper on the budget, but if you have chicken, it's absolutely delicious in this. Sometimes I'll even do a combination of chicken and chickpeas and have a double protein pack on there. I also have some coconut milk. You can do light or full fat. I'm a big fan of full fat personally. Fat does add flavor, and if you're getting the right kinds of fats and avoiding fat that's coming from, say, a bakery good, you're probably going to be just fine. You want to make sure that you get unsweetened. Don't get like a coconut milk that's like meant for drinking and has sugar added. This isn't dessert, this is a soup. So we're going to make sure that we have an unsweetened coconut milk. I also have some fresh greens here. You can do kale, collards, spinach, whatever you have handy, but the greens are really going to add a lot of nutrition to this soup. So let's get going making this. The recipe calls for using coconut oil. Coconut oil is delicious. It will add a little bit of a coconut flavor to this, but if you don't have coconut oil, that's okay. I'm gonna go ahead and use a neutral oil because I bet that's more what people have at home. For those of you who don't know what I mean when I say neutral oil, I mean that it doesn't have flavor. And there are plenty of oils out there that don't have flavor. So safflower oil, grapeseed oil, canola oil, vegetable oil, those are all going to be pretty flavorless, and they're gonna just be a cooking fat to keep things from burning and allow other flavors to shine. Things like peanut oil, olive oil, coconut oil, tend to impart their flavor into the dish. So you want to use those in recipes where that's the flavor profile that you're going for. So I put in that oil in the pot, and then I'm going to teach you something that might be really new. Not a lot of people do this in the United States in their regular part of their cooking. And that's that we're going to pop some mustard seed. So traditionally in India, they would have used black mustard seed. It's a little bit of I think it's a little more bitter, but in a good way. Sometimes bitter is a good flavor profile. Today, because it's more accessible, much easier to find, we're gonna use yellow mustard seeds, which are a great substitute. So I've got my pan warm, the oil is coating the bottom, and I'm adding my mustard. Just gonna put the lid on because these things will pop right out of the pan and all over your stove. I'll let those go. While those are going, I'll show you what else we're going to do. We also have potatoes in here. So this is a really hearty stew. You've got chicken and or chickpeas. You've got coconut milk, which is high fat and really filling. And we're gonna have potatoes. Do you hear that? That's the mustard seed popping. And then you can actually see it hitting the top of the pan pretty violently of the lid. So we're gonna wait till that calms down because I don't wanna get hit in the face with one of those. And that's where the mise en place comes in and is so important, because once they stop popping, you have to be ready. Okay. I'm gonna turn my heat down. If you're adding any chili, this is the time to do it, along with that onion. And you can see I would not have had time to chop up that onion during the time the mustard seeds were popping. It happens fast. So I needed to have those ready. Now all we are going to do with this is cook these until they are translucent. If you are using chicken, you would want to add the chicken as soon as those onions are really nice and soft, but not brown. And then you're going to cook the chicken for a while till it's completely opaque before moving on to the next step. I'm going to set this aside, however, because this is going to take a minute to cook the onion. It would take a minute to cook the chicken and the potatoes. So I'm going to put this over here. And I'm going to bring out a soup that I prepared a little further along ahead of time. So in this pot, you can see that I've got the potatoes and it's become this beautiful golden color. So how did I get that color and how did I chop the potatoes? I'll explain. So for the potatoes, you can use any potato you want. It can be red, it can be yellow, it can be russet, whatever you've got on hand, because we're going to cook them till they're quite soft, and then we're actually going to smash these a little bit to make the soup a little bit thicker. So let me show you. You can chop up an onion basically, or excuse me, a potato, however you want, however big you want the pieces to be. The smaller the pieces, the faster they'll cook. But I like to do slightly bigger pieces so that I have a few pieces of potato that are whole to enjoy while I'm eating my food. So just down the middle and maybe 2 cuts for a potato this size. Like I said, it doesn't matter how you cut it or what kind of potato you use. So I have got these potatoes here, and I'm actually going to take my spoon and I'm going to mash some of those potatoes against the side of the pot. And you can do this as much or as little as you want. If you want more chunks of potato to enjoy whole, don't mash as many. If you want the soup to be a little bit thicker, then mash them a little bit more. But it's nice to have a mix. So I've mashed those up, and I'm going to add my spinach. And it looks like a lot, but spinach cooks down to almost nothing. This is about 5 ounces only of spinach in the end. And I'm going to add my chickpeas because I want to warm those up. And I'm going to add my coconut milk, and you'll see that it gets this sort of thick layer at the top. That's the coconut cream. It's absolutely delicious. If you want to grab a little spoonful of that to put into your coffee or use like you would cream, it's really good. And then there's the more liquid stuff below it. But I'm going to add all of it, the whole can, to the pot because I want all that good fat for flavor in here. And then I'm going to stir this up. And basically what I'm trying to do is just with the heat and with my spoon, break up that chunk of coconut cream into the pot. And really we're just at this point wilting the spinach and reheating those canned chickpeas. If you want to cook your chickpeas from dry, it's going to take a while. Chickpeas cook a long time from dry, but you could make a big batch, and sometimes what I'll do is I'll make way more than I need for a recipe, and then I'll freeze them in amounts that I would generally use, like from a can. And when I'm doing a recipe like this, I just pull out my frozen chickpeas and dump them into the pot, and it's a really cheap way to get the really nice texture of cooking from dried with your beans. So we'll let this sit for a moment, and I'll briefly tell you about why it has that beautiful yellow color. So there's 2 different things that we added to this pot. When you add your potatoes after that chili and onion and potentially chicken has been cooked a little bit, you're going to add the potatoes and you're going to add some water to help the potatoes cook. You're also going to add these powdered spices. So the first one here that's a little bit brighter, this one is just turmeric. And turmeric is a root. It looks sort of similar to ginger, though it's a little skinnier and bright orange inside. And when dried and ground, it looks like this. But turmeric will stain. So please be careful. If you get this in your clothes, if you have light colored countertops, it will leave a mark. It will eventually fade from your countertop, but it might not come out of your clothes. So be very careful and maybe think about an apron while handling the turmeric. The other thing that we put in here that's slightly darker, as you can see, has some turmeric in it. So this is what we call Madras curry powder. And I just want to briefly explain that you'll see recipes that say curry powder often written in the United States or in Great Britain. But curry powder is no one thing. There are thousands, if not millions, of curries out there in the world. Curry simply means mixture. And so Madras curry powder was actually invented by folks that were working from Great Britain in India when they were the imperial power. And when they came back to Great Britain, they missed the flavors of India so badly that they came up with their own approximation of a curry powder. And it became ubiquitous across Great Britain, even though it was actually made up by English guys who had simply lived in India for a while. That said, this curry powder is also used now in India and is all over the United States, often labeled just simply curry powder. But I think it's important to respect the culture that these ideas came from. So if you want to think about it in your head as Madras curry powder and know that little bit of history, it's a good thing to know, and then you have a better understanding of what they're asking for in those recipes. So you might see other recipes that call for things like garam masala, totally different type of curry powder. I would say really try to find this regular curry powder, but it's a nice thing to keep on hand in your pantry because it gets used most often in recipes in the United States and can be added to almost anything for an extra pinch of flavor. I even like to put it sometimes on my box mac and cheese to make it taste more interesting. So please feel free to experiment with that. And then let's take a look at this. Gotta turn my heat up, but you can see the coconut milk is fully mixed in. We just need that spinach to wilt a little bit more and it's ready to serve. So let me turn my heat up and I'll show you how you're going to garnish this. You can skip this step if you want, but it does add flavor and it looks really pretty. So I have some fresh cilantro, and as you can see, it still has a lot of stem. That's just fine. We're just gonna bunch that up and chop it up. Move it along this way too, so that it's pretty finely chopped up. And then, when we want to serve our soup, we're going to actually add a little squeeze of lemon. And you can do this to the whole pot. You can also serve slices of lemon alongside. While lemon is what the recipe calls for, if you have lime or lime juice, you could absolutely substitute with that and it would be just fine. And then to serve this, just gonna scoop this out into the bowl. If you like your spinach to be smaller, you can feel free to chop that up some more. And we're gonna put a little bit of cilantro. And if you really like that madras, you could do a little dusting of that on top for added color. And that's it. It seems like maybe a lot, but it's actually really simple. Just a little bit of cutting and you put it all in one pot and you're ready to go. Enjoy.